My name is Peter Brodhead. I own a company called Bridge Studios. I'm a 50% partner of it. My other partner and I, we both went to University of the Arts in Broad Street. We met there. We became like best friends. We were rock climbing partners. We started our company about 6 years ago, but I've been in this field since I graduated college around 2007. We called it Bridge Studios because we really wanted to bridge the two mediums of physical design and build and digital interactive programming and see how we could merge these two things together to create much deeper experiences, mainly for consumers in retail spaces. My partner and I, that's Matthew, myself, and our other managing partner who lives in Los Angeles. We work with a team. We've got about 20 people in our office in Philadelphia. We're located up by the Betsy Ross Bridge. You know, we definitely pride ourselves at being the forefront of interactive technology, digital displays, whether it's LED, video projection mapping, or utilizing touchscreens, utilizing all types of interactive sensors. That's why when you guys were talking about Touch Designer, I got so excited because Touch Designer is a core software that we use in all of the different projects that we get into. We find it so useful to be able to take LiDAR sensors from cameras and RGB data and do facial recognition and then put it into a software and do all the Python programming and then have all these different outputs controlling moving lights and sound playback and super incredibly high resolution video playback across LED walls and video projection mapping, doing warping on the fly. It's like such an incredible platform for us to kind of express ourselves through this different media. We have a 20,000 square foot facility. We have a whole office where we're doing R&D, and then we have a whole nother section for fabrication. We do wood fabrication. We've got a whole R&D technology lab where we have, it's a flex space, so we're constantly rolling in projects and rolling out projects and setting up all different types of technology that we're testing, whether it's Unity systems, Touch Designer systems, interactive LED lights. We're getting a very large LED wall that we'll be playing with. Racks and racks of equipment, our office where we're just doing stuff all day, and we do a lot of precision metal manufacturing. So we have a 1,000-watt laser, and we've shifted a lot away from wood manufacturing to metal manufacturing because of its precision abilities. So we have a lot of industrial grade equipment to make all that happen. I love doing animation, and it's something that I personally do. So I come from a history of video production and animation, and a little bit of my history is like coming from just general video production. I saw video projection mapping done very early. I saw it done in like 2003, and I said, "Oh my God, this is so cool!" So video projection mapping and animations was really a gateway for me into this much larger world of like not just creating digital media, but showcasing that digital media in the physical world, setting up video projectors and actually activating a space, doing site-specific installations. And I think like activating a space is really like a key term in terms of turning something that's sort of static into something that's totally alive. And in the beginning, back in about 10, 15 years ago, it was sort of just like really nice moving wallpaper. But then as the years went on, I saw, like I keep bringing up Touch Designer. Touch Designer was then the key entry for me to go from projection mapping to incorporate interactive programming and take that projection mapping environment and make it alive and make it react to people, whether it's through touch screens, whether it's through computer vision and blob tracking, but allowing the consumer or whoever to really walk into a space and start to play with it and eventually control it themselves. Love animation. I have a lot of projects here. I think I'll start with one of my dear and near, which is a project, an ongoing project we've done for Lockheed Martin. So this particular thing that we've created is called the Challenge Box. And what it is this cube, and we drop it on college campuses, and we've programmed the touchscreen on the outside with insanely difficult engineering problems. We don't come up with the problems. The Lockheed engineers come up with the problems. But the students will work for days on end trying to solve these engineering problems. Things like, how do you track a satellite that's transmitting X amount of gigabytes over the planet at this telemetry and blah, 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 all this crazy stuff. And eventually they crack the code. And then the door opens up and we have custom electronics that trip the door and hit the actuator, open it up. And then inside we have a mirrored environment with a 12 array screen on the ceiling where we've created all the animations for it, and it's an entire sort of digital voyage into the Lockheed's interest in space. This particular installation was at Virginia Tech, but it's been on tour. We've done installations. We've probably done it about 10 times at universities and trade shows across the country, and it's an ongoing sort of evolution. So this project sort of brings together a lot of the faculties which we find so important. That's fabrication, designing, engineering, this sort of thing. And then the whole digital interactive part where you're actually guessing the answer. You get a wrong answer, you get a right answer, you get the right answer. The solenoid pops open the door, the electromagnet is all hooked together through Arduinos. And then once you get inside, you close the door, the bass drops, and then we do all of the animation and the content creation to create a very intense experience on the inside. So that's why I really like this project in particular, because it just showcases all those faculties kind of getting wrapped up into one. I'll shift a little bit over to Nike. We love robot arms. We think they're super cool. And I think there's a lot of use cases for robots. This was a bit of a kind of just a fun showcase of how we can utilize robots, showing off the new LeBron shoe. Again, showcasing the engineering design work that we did for the whole table and the integration of all the robots. And then these 3 robots, we had to come up with custom programming to control them, not only on a series of loops, but then to use the Microsoft Kinect V2 to track people in the space. And then once someone is detected, the robot will then lock onto that person and follow them around in the space and blast ads in their face. You guys have a really intense curriculum here, but I think I just wanted to show you that there are companies out there like mine in Philadelphia, in New York, in Chicago, and around that are doing these types of work. Because like when I was younger, I didn't know this type of sort of field even existed, and it's definitely growing and evolving really quickly, but. To see this types of stuff, I think, can give a lot of insight as to the types of things you guys are studying, the types of tools you guys are using now. And now is the time that you guys are at the age now where it's like you can just dive into these things and learn these things. And that's exactly what I did when I was your age. Is I just spent as much time as possible, like working with all these crazy tools, working with all these crazy softwares, experimenting with everything, and eventually it led to a field where it was applicable and we could sell our services. Let's see. Oh, I'll show you a little projection mapping. This one's kind of cool. We do a lot of work with Adidas. So Adidas is constantly reformatting their store on 5th Avenue in Manhattan, and about every 6 weeks, we would change over what's happening in the store. So here's another great example of using multiple projectors and projection mapping, not only for the walls and tracing different elements in the space with some eye candy stuff, but on the floor doing blob tracking and tracking people and interacting with them and just giving people a fun time to interact with the whole the whole kind of story that they're trying to sell. This particular activation was all about disrupting, and there was the Derupt shoe. So we wanted to give people the sense that they were disrupting the grid and disrupting their environment and allowing them to interact with it. The shoes, not only is the projection mapping interactive, but the shoes, we developed custom Arduino with gyroscopes so that you could pick up a shoe and you could move the shoe around and you could interact with the visuals in front of you. So I think that's a big key component to what we're doing is we're creating custom electronics that we can embed in apparel, whether it's shoes and different types of things, and allowing the consumer to play in a deeper way. For the Space Jam release, AT&T purchased Warner Brothers. So all of the major movie releases happened inside of the retail environments. And there's the whole sense of, retail-tainment, trying to turn these retail stores into like theme parks. So here's a great example of something that we've designed, fabricated, installed, and programmed all together. Utilizing interactive LED lights for the top, and utilizing Unity as an interactive system so that you could create your own avatar. I'll wait for this video to start over again. But this was a wonderful experience where you were able to design and create your own player that would be from the movie. When it's all done, you get to see the player you created inside of a real-time 3D scene all played back in Unity. So it's a cool project, but one of the crazy parts about it is we did it in 4 weeks. And that has to go with almost all of the things we're showing you. Rarely do we get more than 8 weeks to produce one of these projects. So we are constantly under huge amounts of stress to produce these projects, and they come and go so quickly. And if you asked me what I did like 3 months ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But there's very little development time, and we execute really quickly. But that's why it's so important to have all these specialized people on our team. So we've got incredibly good programmers, incredibly good mechanical engineers, and all these people working together, and their faculties can pull together in a really quick way. Another thing we developed, this is right up my alley with my history of projection mapping, is at the AT&T flagship store in Dallas. We created this truncated sphere with 4 projections to create so we could showcase 360 video. We also fabricated the whole thing. We designed the whole thing. I had to research specific software for blending across a truncated sphere. The bottom 25% and the top 25% have been cut off. And then the 25% of the entryway is cut off, so it's nicely geometric. But to take 360 videos, actually most of these videos were pulled right off of YouTube 360, and there's just so much stuff out there that we can play with and throw in the mix. Also, the whole touchscreen interface, allowing the user to scroll and look around. It's all custom programming, all done in Touch Designer. Oh, this one's cool. For the Wonder Woman. We do a lot of augmented reality, and I haven't got to those specific projects yet, but I think one of our specialties are bringing these like augmented reality experiences to life physically in the store. So another example of what we've done in the Dallas AT&T flagship store, they have this big LED wall. We came in, we added 1 computer and 1 Kinect Azure to do skeletal tracking. We got the actual geometry of the wings from Warner Brothers. And then in Touch Designer, it probably would be a little bit better in Unity, but in Touch Designer we did dynamic background removal. We communicated with the internal AV rack to switch over from their program over to our program to interrupt the usual thing that's shown there. And then skeletal tracking the user and attaching the wings on the back, and then using gestures to open the wings and close the wings. This was done about a year ago when we did everything in Touch Designer. Recently, we've brought in actually a Drexel graduate by the name of Dan Silva, and he is our Unity programmer now. So now we're shifting over a bit more to Unity programming, opposed to just doing everything in Touch Designer. And we're finding that there's strengths and weaknesses with these different platforms, and we're really excited for the future of what that can bring. During COVID, we were like, how can we have consumers interact with a story without touching a screen? Like, everything had to be touchless, and we were so struggling with that. So again, the Kinect Azure is like our weapon of choice. It is so great at capturing skeletal data, using with interactive systems. We love the Kinect Azure, and we're actually excited that Microsoft just announced that it's gonna be coming out with a 4th version of the Kinect, which will be even more high powered than the Azure, which is great. But here, going through this sort of yes or no scenario by raising your left hand or your right hand, interesting ways of getting around this new COVID era. Augmented reality, Warner Brothers characters, wearing the different hats, type of thing that we're developing for the Windows platform in Unity, and then also creating it for iPads and shipping it out to thousands of iPads nationwide in AT&T stores. So really scaling up the types of development that we're doing, opposed to just doing one-off installations. But yeah, also a big struggle with this, how do we do facial tracking with masks? And we ended up doing, it's obviously a lot tighter without the mask because it can track the whole face, but then we found a way to utilize more of just like a head mapping, and we were able to put hats on people's heads even with the mask on. So that was a big hurdle. Also, we love using QR codes. We love interacting with consumers' mobile devices. So we love putting QR codes on our experiences, scan the QR code, and then you can make decisions, you can move left and right, you can have a touch-free experience, which is COVID-friendly, in a high throughput area like a retail store like AT&T, and then you can send your email, you can send photos of it to yourself, you can interact with it in any way, shape, or form just by creating a website that coincides with the physical experience. So that has been a huge plus, is developing those sorts of things. I'm gonna skip that. This is actually last year, but this is what my team is doing in Dallas, San Francisco, and Chicago this week. They're building these huge present boxes. Let's see if there's a video here. Here it is. Here's all the animations they made for it. But yeah, we're building all these present boxes for all the AT&T stores, all the 3 flagship AT&T stores. And the same type of thing, there's an iPad there with a QR code. You can scan the QR code, and then you can pick which box that you'd want to change a channel on, and you can change a channel. Incorporating the consumer's mobile devices, adding interactivity, it's definitely the frontier that we are trying to push. There's the iPad with the QR code. It's somewhere in this video, but I don't want to hang out forever and all. There's a lot of projects to see. I just wanted to show you the mobile device part. Here it is. Touch-free interactivity, constantly rotating every 30 seconds with the QR code so that users can't take a photo of the QR code and go home and DDoS attack our system. Here you can choose which present you want to change the channel on and change the channel all through an HTML site that loads in the browser.
So just to clarify, so they're scanning the QR code, and then it's going to a website, and then it's going to like a web page that's optimized for the mobile device, like a web app?
Yep, it's just a website. It's optimized for mobile device, sending a WebSocket command to the Touch Designer computer that's there. Every QR code has specific information. This one's in Dallas, this one's in San Francisco, this one's in, so it's obviously associated with the right computer, or someone in New York isn't controlling the one in San Francisco. But yes, using a WebSocket to communicate with the on-site Touch Designer system that's doing the video playback.
I just wanted to emphasize that for the students that take my web app class and say, nobody uses this.
It is so powerful. I mean, yes, apps are awesome, but you have to download an app, and that is the biggest hurdle we come across with our clients. Is no consumer wants to go to a one-time activation and download an app to have an experience with it. It's just nobody wants to do that. So we're constantly being forced to revert back to the browser and have a full-blown either web AR experience or mobile website kind of make decisions along the way experience. We're constantly coming back to almost the lowest common denominator of interactive technology on your phone, which is the browser. I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what we're thinking for this Nike application, because I mean, obviously when it's an application, there's just so much more processing power and abilities that can be done on the mobile device. Incorporating people's mobile devices. I know like web design isn't the sexiest thing in the world. App design is like frustrating, but having it coincide with these larger interactive experiences is so important, and we do see the benefit there. I'm trying to get down to this one project. Aha, here it is. This is a little bit older project, but I am so proud of this project. This is for Harry Potter, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie. When it was launched, AT&T had recently acquired Warner Brothers, so it was a big deal. They wanted to do a huge showcase. And here's some photos of the experience, but I want to come down to the video and walk you through it. This is the end of it. So the whole thing is you turn the light on your phone, and we created these custom medallion seals with light receiving diodes in it, and you had to cast the spell from the movie with the light on your phone to activate the experience. Those types of ideas are so good, and it usually takes an ad agency. So there's us, there's an ad agency, and then there's AT&T, and the ad agency comes up with the ideas. These ideas are brilliant. It's so simple. You're in a phone store. You're using the phone. You're making it into a wand, and you're casting spells to interact with the interactive experience. There's so many cool things happening with such a simple sort of idea. But they come to us, they're like, okay, we got this idea, make it happen. So we're in our studio. Some Pepper's Ghost. We're in our studio doing this, soldering all the diodes together, doing all the Arduinos, experimenting with breadboards, and finding robust ways to get all this technology to fit in a small container, and then shipping it out to stores nationwide, and doing the 3 major flagship stores. This is our old studio from a couple years ago. Reformatting keyboards by putting different vinyl on it, but you can see all these different seals that we made with custom Arduinos and breadboards, taking apart old cameras, putting 4K webcams inside of them, and doing that whole thing. So there's a whole sort of art department component to what we're doing with the technology. This one was cool. We're actually tracking the person's face in space and then taking it so you can move around, but then we're tracking your face, and then you can become one of the characters from the movie. But yeah, I love just the initial concept of utilizing your phone to then interact with the experience. So that kind of wraps up the AT&T work. Did you guys all hear that question? How do we like ideate a concept and go from ideation to execution? That is definitely different from project to project because we have different relationships with different clients. AT&T in specifically, there's an ad agency of records that works for them that we work with, and they kind of come up with the ideas, and we get a long, huge book of pretty pictures, and it's our job to make those pretty pictures physically be manufactured and all the programming come to life and all that kind of stuff. We get a lot of direction from them, but we do all of the actual work. So that's how it works with something like our relationship with AT&T. But whereas with Adidas, it's a little bit more casual, and we're kind of doing something different in the store like once every 6 weeks. So this is something where I'll get an idea and I'll run it and we'll just like make it happen. I'll be like, oh, let me take the moon and I'll video map it to this thing, and they put the floor down and we make this like crazy thing in the back with a bunch of buttons, and you can play a bunch of sounds, and it's got this different video playback system. So this was actually all done in bright signs. You can press different buttons to watch videos, and then I was like, wait a minute, this would be so cool. Let's put a little USB keyboard in there and hook it up, and just people can jam out with a bunch of space sounds. There's no sound to this video right now, but yeah, it was just a really fun thing that like we kind of just threw in the mix because I think at some point you get in that relationship with a client where they trust you. You've been in the ring a couple times, and we're like, I got this idea, let me do it, and you just kind of make it happen, and everyone's happy, you know. And that's really the goal, is to make a fun experience for the consumers. This particular here's just a showcase of me in cinema taking NASA 360 wraps of the moon, wrapping it around a sphere, doing content creation. This is like, I think there was like 12 projectors for that whole array because there was so many objects in the way. So I had like 3 rows of 4, and then they're all blended together. So it's definitely a lot of work. We do it in over 2 nights. I want to jump over to a strictly augmented reality project that we did with Oakley. I think it was really well done in terms of the ideas. So there was the release of the new Kato eyewear, but they manufactured about 15 of these seating kits. The seating kit would come to you, you would scan the QR code, and if the time was, you would see a countdown clock happen. And when the countdown clock hit 0, then this experience would unfold in front of you, taking you through like a history of Oakley and its eyewear, and it was all done through Instagram's Spark AR platform. So this was just an Instagram filter. The entire thing was 4 megabytes. And the reason we used Instagram is, again, we didn't want to have people like Patrick Mahomes download an app just to do our experience. Like, we knew that wasn't going to fly. But we know that all these influencers that were getting this stuff have Instagram. They have huge Instagram accounts. And utilizing the best tool at the time is, I think, a really good creative decision to make sure that you have a successful project in the end. We're constantly, with augmented reality, constantly working against bandwidth limits. Like I said, this whole project was 4 megabytes. We were trying to like use old school gaming techniques to like do just tiny rasters of little things and really cheesy low poly things, and like pre-rendering lighting and all that kinds of stuff to cram this whole experience into 4 megabytes, because it is literally an Instagram filter, just like a face filter, but we cram this whole experience in it. Here's a fun project we did for YouTube, showcasing that kind of projection sphere on a much smaller environment. You know, obviously virtual reality, you know, came around like 6-7 years ago. Like, everyone had it at every trade show booth, at every conference I went to. And then people got sick of it, and they're like, okay, how can we do virtual reality without the headset? So we developed this idea of using a spherical mirror and a half dome, a hemisphere, and projecting a radically distorted video image into the sphere. Then we went a step further, and we found a way to live stream 360 content over YouTube and feed it into this machine. So at the DNC and the RNC, we had cameras on stage with Hillary and Trump yelling at each other, and then we were able to live stream it inside the dome. There's also a touchscreen. We use the leap motion sensor so that you can look around by rotating your hand using the rotation values left and right to look left and look right. And then you can choose, if the live stream wasn't happening, you could watch a roller coaster ride or explore the Hadron Collider. But trying to find unique ways to interact with 360 and virtual reality content without putting a headset on. That's something like we've never done an actual virtual reality project because everything we want to do is based in the physical world and take those digital experiences and make them physical. Touch Designer, spaghetti mess. Similar idea, taking an entire room and turning it into a large projection canvas. This is a Dior watch launch. This is earlier in my career. This is probably from 10 years ago, but really cool effect. I mean, taking super beautiful content, showcasing it on the walls, and then creating custom content specifically for the event of these sort of particle explosions using After Effects and wrapping them around the room. This is actually here in Philadelphia for Design Week. We took over the Icebox Gallery on American Street. And then different types of ideation. So these are the types of things we show to the client. How can we use an array of just generic TVs and make some sort of immersive environment? Wrap it around them. And we've, or maybe like a video chamber. So these are the types of things we're kind of just sketching, ideating, and trying to get some jobs going. Are there any projects you do with virtual reality? No! We do everything in real reality, and that's really the kind of, the whole ethos of what we're doing at our company is bridging the gap between what is us on a screen and just like in a 16:9 format, and we're taking that out of that format and trying to deliver it inside of the reality you live in every day.
Have there been like projects that are in production that have gone awry, and how has your team worked to troubleshoot those and
The failures. Yes, I had one. I could say that in my career of doing this, which is I've sort of been doing it in one evolution or another since I was a teenager, but like in my entire career, I have had one failure, and it was for the Discovery Channel. And what happened is I promised too much. It came on the heels of a huge Nike project, and in the back of my mind there was this little voice that was like I was like, oh yeah, we'll like figure it out on site. Like, oh, we'll get there. Like, I was very much too focused on the Nike project, which was a slamming success. It was awesome. And then 2 days later, after that project, I got on site to do the Discovery project, and I had like hired freelancers to help me, and I just called someone and didn't have a relationship, but I just like, oh cool, I have that person to do that one, I have that person to do that one, and I had this sort of like mental idea of a team which was not actually put together, and it was not vetted enough. And we got on site, and I was awake for like 48 hours straight trying to like pull this thing together, and it sort of came together. It was not what we promised the client, and I will never let that happen again. And I think it was really important for me to have that failure to truly understand what it feels like when the pressure is the pressure is just on. It couldn't be on more. And I never want to be in that position ever again. And I will do everything in my power to plan and prepare correctly so it doesn't happen again. So embrace the failures when they happen. And because if you don't come across a failure, you're just setting yourself up for some mega failure in the future. Have your failures happen. But prepare as much as possible. Take on as much as possible early in your career, and learn where your thresholds is and how much you can actually output before you crack. Because everyone has that point where they will crack, and I found mine at that point, and now I know not to go there anymore. Yes.
Someone is asking on Zoom, how did you make these connections with big companies?
Yeah, putting yourself out there. That's the last. How do you make these connections with big companies? Networking, putting yourself out there. It's putting yourself out there and dedicating yourself to your craft. Being in my early 20s, it's like all I did. Like everyone's going out to the bars and getting messed up, and I was just working on my computer and like trying to figure out how to do these intricacies and how to get softwares to talk to softwares and hardwares to talk to hardwares, and it paid off. And I was able to promise and deliver technical projects for my clients, and one person's like, that was a good experience, and they talked to the other person, and they talked to another person, and literally all of our connections are because of just word of mouth. Now in the ad agency world, there's a lot of high turnover, so you have people moving from agency to agency all the time. So you do an amazing project, and they're like, yes, that's awesome, we loved working with you. That person leaves, they go to the next agency, and they bring you in, then you meet a whole other collection of people. So it's just this like ongoing, slow collection of good experiences with people. And yeah, I mean, I always constantly sold who I was. I'm like, I'm Peter, I do video and interactivity. And I just like planted that in everyone's brain. Being successful, you have to deliver a great project, and you have to be cool and with the people that you're working with, and they have to enjoy spending that time with you. You know, there's the whole like actual like project that you're doing, and then there's like all this other time where you're like waiting for the truck to show up, or the freight elevator's stuck, and this is happening there, and all this other stuff is happening, and you're spending time with the clients, and you guys are getting to know each other better and better, and that pays off immensely. This was kind of playing in the background, but it was a super cool project I just want to chat about real quick. Utilizing different types of technology. This movie came out a hot second ago. We did this at Comic-Con in New York City, and we created this entire booth, but I loved it so much because not only did we kind of create this beautiful booth with all these different screens and everything, but it was fully interactive where you would put a Bluetooth sensor reading your heart rate, and your heart rate would run a real-time analysis of your heart matched up to the animation of your heart beating. We had a big-ass subwoofer in the back, and it was like, bo 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 bo. And then there was huge fans up top that were all controlled by a DMX-controlled fan. So the lower you could get your heart rate and calmness, you could calm the storm around you. And if your heart rate rose up, the wind would blast harder, and the snow would blast, the visuals would blast around you. And these are some of the pre-renders we do to kind of get the client going and get us on board. But really cool getting these technologies together and delivering in the physical space. People loved it. Oh man, I mean, it's Comic-Con, so everyone's there to have a good time. But yeah, it was a great experience. This was I want to show you a little art project. We do a lot of corporate work, and I think it's really important to keep your artistic endeavors going outside of your commercial work. I have 2 kids, I've got a growing business, I don't have a lot of time, but there is time in the day, and I do find time at some point in the week to go back in and create something just for art's sake. This is an example.
I had this ongoing thought that, you know, when you put
sound.
your phone to sleep, or you close your laptop and that goes to sleep, you know, does the computer have some sort of dream? Does it dream of you know, going through routers and traveling across the world through fiber optic cables? And if it had dreams, what would these dreams look like?
I created a project called Digital Dreamscape, analyzing what the computers dream when they're in sleep mode.
For Film Week at the New York Media Center, we created an exhibition called the Digital Dreamscape, and it explored these dreams.
Is a great example of teaming up with a facility that had the infrastructure already in place in Dumbo, in New York City. I live in Philadelphia, so it was a way for me to showcase what I do to an audience in Manhattan. Another big breakthrough is leaving Philadelphia. I have been in Philadelphia for 20 years, but things changed for me dramatically when I went to New York City and I started working with agencies in New York City. Philly is a great city for me to like get introduced to urban living. I grew up in the Bumpkins in Upper Bucks County, like, you know, driving around pickup trucks and in the middle of like cornfields and stuff like that. But coming to Philadelphia, I learned about the urban way of living, but it wasn't until I went to New York City and I was exposed to going to Los Angeles and Miami and Chicago and these much major hubs, and then internationally. It wasn't until I got into these major hubs was I did I have access to brands like Nike and Adidas and AT&T and Lockheed Martin and these sorts of things. So I definitely recommend, on your guys' voyage for your career, leave Philadelphia, like learn what you have here, but venture out, go to these major hubs, and do it in a time in your life like before you have a family and like before you get tied down in your 20s is a wonderful time to go move from city to city after you guys graduate and get tapped in, meet people, go to events, keep showing people what it is that you guys love to do in terms of your own creativity and how you can express yourself through technical, the creative process. So yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I just wanted to leave you guys with is just like keep reaching out to people and showing people what you get excited about, and that eventually leads you to other people who are like-minded, and eventually someone will purchase the thing that you want to do.
No, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. That was a joy to share my story with you.